We are just waiting 2 minutes, 1 minute more.
No problem.
We start. Hello, everyone. Hello. I am very pleased to welcome Dr. Irene Forster-Müller, director of the Austrian Archaeological Institute in Cairo, this evening for our archaeological keynote. Irene Forster-Müller studied Egyptology at University of Vienna, where she received her doctorate in 2002 with a thesis on the graves of Area A2 of Tel El Daba, and where she has also been teaching since 2005. Dr. Forster-Müller is director of the excavations in Tel El Daba since 2009 and in Kumombo since 2017. Her research focuses mainly on the Egyptian Middle Kingdom and Second Intermediate Period, on ceramology and landscape archaeology, Egypt and its relations with the Near East in the second millennium BC. She organized major international workshops and work groups in the past years, like Egyptian riverine harbors, and the Ixos King Kayan, new insights on the chronology of the 13th and 15th dynasties, and Nubian pottery from Egyptian culture, context of the Middle Kingdom and the early New Kingdom. Irene Forster-Müller is a corresponding member of the German Archaeological Institute and a member of the Commission for Egypt and Levant of the East Austrian Academy of Sciences. She will talk about her recent discoveries in Kumombo, where I had the pleasure to work 2 years ago under her supervision for a little week. I was impressed by the amazing structures preserved on the site, and I'm sure you will be too, attendees. And I know that your excavations here, Dr. Irene Forster-Müller, will have a great impact on our understanding of the first intermediate period and urbanism and of their late third millennium. Thank you. So I leave you the floor, and thank you to be here with us today.
Thank you, Andrea, for this kind introduction. And first of all, thank you for organizing this workshop. And I think I may speak of all of us. I enjoyed very, very much. And I'm also very honored that I'm invited to present our work in Kumombo and its impact on the first intermediate period. So thank you again, Andrea. It's really a lovely workshop.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So, hope this is stuck now, right? For reasons I don't know. The town of Kumombo has been a new project in our research program, Urban and Settlement Archaeology in Egypt since 2017. It was initiated in this period. The site itself is located about 45 kilometers north of Aswan. And the modern Kumombo is an industrial town, which is far away from the Nile, and here the sugarcane or the sugar industry dominates. The archaeological site has until recently mainly been known for the Ptolemaic temple, which you see here, dedicated to Harueris and Sobex, and Kumombo is also one of the major touristic sites here in Egypt. Our project is a joint Egyptian-Austrian mission. And in this slide here, you see our first fact-finding visit when we were looking for a new project on urban archaeology in town. And we went to Kumombo in late autumn 2017. You see here to the very right, Pamela Rose, then my husband, Wolfgang Müller, and then our future cooperation partner of the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, Dr. Abdelmenem Said, and the head of the tourist police, Mohammed Bey, who were both extremely helpful in initiating this project, which actually was my first project working in Upper Egypt. The ancient Kumombo, as you see here, is like all major towns in pharaonic Egypt, situated along the Nile. The plain of Kumombo extends around 450 kilometers east of the Nile. The Nile is in this area wider and bends towards the east. And our idea is to investigate the town, so not the temple, but the town and the hinterland. The landscape has changed enormously at the beginning of the 20th century when the first Aswan Dam was built by the British. Then the desert was changed into an agriculturally used area, as you see here, all the fields. And also then the sugar processing industry started. The name Kumombo derives from Nebit or Nebu, the golden one, in Coptic Imbo and Ombos in Greek. And this might hint or clearly hints to the place was a starting point for expeditions to gold mines and quarries in the east, at least latest by the New Kingdom. The area itself is already settled since the Paleolithicum, and in the Roman period, it was the metropolis of the first Upper Egyptian nome. In the periods before, the situation is less clear. However, and I'm going to show this during this paper, the town already had an important position in the Old Kingdom and also in the first intermediate period. The actual tell, which you see here, is protected as antiquity land and covers an area of approximately or around 6 hectares. And the aim of our work is the investigation of the tell, but also the hinterland. So the actual area which was settled is much larger as the tell itself. The earliest evidence for the name of Kumombo is known from our most recent work. A seal bearing the name of the 5th dynasty king, Neferirkare, was reconstructed by Laure Pantalacci and Philippe Sayer, and Laure is in the audience, so I'm very happy to have her as a cooperation partner. Laure and Professor Pantalacci and Philippe Sayer are studying the ceilings of our excavation, and they reconstructed this ceiling from 3 ceiling impression fragments. It's the earliest attestation of the ancient name of Kumombo Nebut known so far, and the only example until now from the Old Kingdom. Formerly, the earliest attestation of the toponym, as mentioned before, is a phrase in the tomb of Antifi at Muala, which I'm going to show in a minute. The owner of this ceiling was part of the personnel of a Parshena located at Kumombo. His title should most probably be reconstructed as an overseer or perhaps a supervisor of the scribes belonging to the Parshena. And additionally, the inscription specifies that the Parshena was part of the institution of a royal repast. Kumombo is in the tomb of Antifi in Muala. About the tomb we have heard a lot already during this wonderful workshop. Muala is around 140 kilometers north of Kumombo. Antifi was a local ruler of the 3rd Upper Egyptian nome, who conquered the Theban nome to the north and the 2nd and 1st Upper Egyptian nomes to the south. And in his tomb, Antifi says, "I brought life to Heracompolis and Edfu, Elephantine and Ombos," claiming that he rescued the inhabitants of these towns from famine. More epigraphic evidence at the site is known from the late 11th, or according to Marcel Marie, very early 12th dynasty, as you see here on the slide. Here you have the official Sebekotep, one of his titles is Iripat, and his wife Nofro Weret, which are depicted here. These limestone blocks come from a tomb which had been discovered by a Prussian expedition of the Papyrusunternehmen der Königlichen Museen to Berlin, headed by Friedrich Zucker, at the beginning of the 20th century. The tombs were found approximately 1.5 kilometers to the east of the temple area. Unfortunately, until now, we don't know exactly where these tombs are really located. Part of these finds are now in the Egyptian Museum in Berlin, and we have started a cooperation. Jana Helmbold will do the scientific part, and in 2020 we were lucky. It was just before the COVID-19 crisis started. We had the opportunity to go there to take photos, and you see here our photographers in action. And we are really very grateful to all the staff of the museum in Berlin who made our stay wonderful. For our research of utmost importance is the survey of Barry Kemp and Michael Jones in 1979. And Barry Kemp was the first who identified the pharaonic town of Kumombo. He could localize part of the Old Kingdom in the reddened earth area, which you see here in this area. And I'm also grateful to Barry also to provide us with many of the slides which are not published and which we are allowed to use for further use. Also very important for us, actually substantial for us, is the work of the recently undertaken groundwatering lowering project done by USAID in cooperation with the Ministry of Antiquities in order to protect the temple from the raising groundwater. This project took place between 2017 until 2019, so they worked parallel with us. And we had a very good cooperation and exchange of knowledge, and this really broadened our knowledge of the site and the history of Kumombo in general, and also on the period presented in this lecture. We started our work in November 2017, and here you have an image of our surveyors Christian Kurze and Astrid Hassel, who made a grid and a rough survey over the tell. Besides that, we undertook a magnetic survey, which was undertaken in cooperation with Salvage of the University of Warsaw and the Polish Academy of Sciences, who is a long-term research partner of mine. We worked many years together also in Teledaba. The result of this survey clearly show that in the north of the temple, so in this area here, we have structures which this is exactly the area where Barry Kemp identified this reddened soil area and the old kingdom town. And here you have structures which clearly belong to this period. But I will come to this back later. The extension of the settlement area appears distinctively both by the magnetic survey, but also by the work of USAID, because they did a lot of core drillings. And the site was surrounded by water on all sides in some periods, which means that Kumombo was then an island, similar to other Egyptian towns like Elefantine, Edfu, or for example, also Avaris, Teledaba. The investigated area which we have chosen for further research is situated between the Ptolemaic Temple, in this part, and the Crocodile Museum, which was erected during when Zaya was head of the antiquities. So he did a complete reorganization of the site. And this is exactly the area of the pharaonic town of Kumombo, which had already been identified as Barry Kemp as such. Here you have a photo taken from the north towards the temple, which just gives you an overview of the very complex stratigraphy of the tell in this part. And as Andrea already said, it's really fantastic how well the structures have survived, especially when you come from the delta where this is not the case. Here is a preliminary chronological table which shows the periods of the occupation which are attested at the site until now. For us, relevant are these periods, but as I said, it's really preliminary. These phases 11 to 13, we defined them mostly by material culture. Phase 13 dates most probably to the later Old Kingdom. Phase 12 from the later Old Kingdom to the earlier first intermediate period, and phase 11 from the later first intermediate period to the very early Middle Kingdom. And you see here already Uroš Matic, who is doing the pottery of the site, is already comparison to Elefantine, where the material culture is very similar to Kumombo. On this plan here, you see the remains of the town of the first intermediate period in the excavated part. What we can say is that there are two districts or two quarters divided by a domestic area, which is in this part, and the cemetery, which is in the north, and a massive enclosure wall divides these two areas into the several parts. This wall is also very well precise, at least 3 meters high, and has several faces. And one is immediately reminded on the enclosure walls, which were identified by Nadine Möller in Tel Edfu. In this plan, you see the general plan of Edfu, which indicates the long-term evaluation of the site, and the similar impression you get from Kumombo. Here you have the Old Kingdom enclosure wall, and the first intermediate period enclosure wall, where there is a shift to the west, and then finally the very early Middle Kingdom enclosure wall in Tel Edfu. And again, a photo of the situation in Edfu, which is really similar to Kumombo. At both sides, there is a sequence of quite high-standing enclosure walls from more or less the same periods. Going back to Kumombo, in the north, there is the cemetery, which dates from the later Old Kingdom to the very beginning of the Middle Kingdom. In the southern part is the edge of a large building with many rooms and silos, which seem to be part of a storage sector or an administrative building. This building has several phases. Those excavated until now all date to the end of the first intermediate period, very cautiously saying 11th dynasty and early 12th dynasty, and allow me to use these terms. It's separated to the north by this rounded enclosure wall. The structures originally are made of unburned mud brick. They're reddish and burned, and these reddish layers are visible all over the tell. You see here the reddish layers and the situation when we started our first season in 2017. This is the view from the south to the north to the Crocodile Museum. And the edge of the tell here. The area is sloping from the modern enclosure wall of the temple towards the north. And you see here our colleague Sandra Müller documenting this part. You already see part of the silos, which immediately are visible below the surface. You should just clean and define them. And again, you have all these burnt layers, which are more or less all over the tell. Here you see the eastern part of this building with rooms and silos. So you have one room here, another room here, several divisions in this part here, and really amazingly well preserved. Here is a 3D model of this administrative building with silos in beehive shape. This is a 3D model made with the computer program Structures from Motion by Sandra Müller. You see in this room here, the part of the excavation, you see the silo, and you see vessels along the walls, and part of the enclosure wall, which divides this part from the cemetery, and then a huge pit from most recent times. The architecture is really remarkably well preserved, as you can see here. We have not reached yet the base of this part of the room, but the excavated part is approximately 1.8 meters high. The walls are mostly plastered, as you see here, and in this room here, there was an entrance here in the south, and in the southwestern corner, and this was at a later phased and walled up. As you can see clearly here, the wall then is protruding into the room. As already seen on the magnetic image, the administrative complex extends to the south, so it goes into the below the modern enclosure wall of the temple towards the temple. So the Ptolemaic temple sits on these layers, and it was also discovered by our Egyptian colleagues who did a salvage excavation in winter 2018 and 19. So this is quite a substantial part of the town. The cemetery outside the enclosure wall dates to the first intermediate period and in its earliest phase, possibly already to the late Old Kingdom. The later phase consists of at least 4 large mastabas, which are aligned to the north of the enclosure wall. So you find here these 4 mastabas, but the cemetery continues in this area, more to the north, and also in this part here. In the corner here, there was a massive mud brick structure on top of the structure as a first part of the layer. And it was in the beginning quite enigmatic to us, but could be identified then as the superstructure of a large mastaba 4 with at least 3 entrance shafts, as you see here. But the building, the structure continues to the east and has not been excavated yet. Here you see the left, the 3 shafts here before excavation, and the superstructure with several pits, which are later destruction areas or destruction activities. You have here again one of the shafts and the entrance to a burial chamber in shaft 1. Shafts are around 3 meters deep. Entrance is from the north, and it's vaulted, as you can see here. Later, the shafts were walled up by mud bricks. Again, please notice also this reddish color. So all these parts are very burned. To the left here, you have the remains of this large mastaba with 2 burials, as you see here, and the 2 western entrance shafts, entry shafts. And the western burial, which was robbed multiple times, like all the cemetery was heavily robbed, and pottery found within as grave goods. And my colleague Uroš Matic will tomorrow, inshallah, he will talk about the pottery and the stratification in this from this site. To the right here, you see again the superstructure of the large mastaba. The cemetery continues in the west. There are more mastabas, as you see already the walls here. And the superstructures, however, have not been preserved but destroyed by later activities. Within the tomb chambers, the individual burials are covered by mud brick walls of typical Egyptian types, as you see here. These barrel-shaped walls. The burials are really squeezed into the chambers, and each individual buried was then covered by such a wall, as you see here. Again, these tombs are heavily burned, and these red layers are a significant feature all over the tell of Kumombo. The deceased are buried normally in left lateral position. You here see one of the skeletons, again, highly burned, so this was, and then a very fragile condition. The head is normally towards the north and facing to the east. The only grave goods we found, there were pottery vessels, as you see here. In this case, the body of the dead was deposited on a wooden board, which was partly painted red. An exceptional burial is seen here. This is the only example that the body was put into a pit, in a flexed position. It was put in front of the entrance of one of the large mastabas, so in this area here. This mastaba was then not in use anymore. The tombs in the north, depicted here in green color, are most probably older than the mastabas along the enclosure wall, but there is not a cut, but it's really a continuation of the use of the cemetery. The tomb architecture here differs from the mastabas which are along the wall, while with those the outer walls are thick and the partition walls within the rooms are small. Here it's the opposite. The mastabas here, they have large walls, so very similar, which was shown today by Ako, and small walls dividing the individual mastabas, and here shown in blue. All of them are badly robbed. Here you see one of these tombs with a robber's pit here cut into one of the walls. This cemetery extends to the north, so it's quite large and continues in this area. A salvage excavation was undertaken to the northwest of the Crocodile Museum, here marked in red, TP27, which was undertaken by us in cooperation with the groundwater lowering project, brought to light more tombs from the later first intermediate period, and they're going to be studied, hopefully in the next season. And these tombs in the area are not burned, interestingly. Again, these are large mastabas with several rooms within. They are badly plundered. One burial was buried within a wooden coffin. Not surprisingly, within the kingdom and first intermediate layers, we found Nubian pottery, not as much, but nevertheless. And Uroš Matic is going to present it in his paper tomorrow. What we also did is systematic sieving of all the soil we retrieved. And this was undertaken and brought to light the most spectacular finds, seal impressions. And as I said, this group is being studied by Professor Laurent Pelacci and Philip Sayer. You see here is one of the sealings of the Old Kingdom. And the storage and industrial sector, which dates to the first intermediate period, yielded about around 40 sealings, which impressed by stamp seals. Unlike the Old Kingdom material, the predominant category here from this sector are peg and string sealings, which show the impression of a wooden cylinder and vegetal cords tied around it. They might have been used for sealing boxes, but it is also possible that the pegs were in fact door bolts. The current data do not yet allow for connecting them to the sealing mechanism of the architectural structures they were found in, but this does not seem unlikely. Apart from that, we could identify fragments of sealings fixed on various mobile communities, such as jars, boxes, and baskets. Sealings and seals with comparable motifs suggest that the dating of the Kumombo material covers all stages of the first intermediate period, and the sector might consequently have been used over a long period. The stamp sealings display a big variation of sizes and motifs employed. Different labyrinthical and other abstract patterns occur especially often. A little less frequent are animals, ash, and human figures. They occur quite rarely. As Laura Pantalacci demonstrated on the base of contemporary sealings from Belat, the differences in size and motifs might denote different levels of responsibility. However, the small corpus, which is available at Kumombo, does not allow yet any precise sequencing or a significant statistic analysis of the sealing practices employed in first intermediate period Kumombo. The cemetery of the Old Kingdom and early first intermediate period is built on top of a massive leveling layers which cover the Old Kingdom settlement. So there's also a change of use in this area, going from the domestic use in the Old Kingdom proper to the late Old Kingdom, first intermediate period, and as a cemetery. And you see these massive layers here in the section, in the southern section. And the pottery from these layers dates to the mid-5th dynasty, according to the first evaluation. And since not all of the material was studied yet, a later date cannot be entirely excluded. And below here is the Old Kingdom settlement. However, this is a topic for a different lecture. So it is not clear how Kumombo fitted into the administrative organization of the first Upper Egyptian nome during the Old Kingdom and First Intermediate period. However, it is noticeable that Kumombo was not mentioned in the Coptos edicts, in the Coptos I edict of King Neferkahor to the Vizier Semni, which concerning its position in Upper Egypt, where the Upper Egyptian nome capitals are listed. In this document, Kumombo is not listed, but there was Elephantine already followed by Edfu. Whether, as it was assumed by Helk, that the first Upper Egyptian nome was already divided administratively, or as Detlef Franke argued, that the list of toponyms in Antiquis tomb is not a list of nomes, but of towns, cannot be answered at this point. We can say that Kumombo in Antiquis tomb is mentioned alongside other significant towns in this area or in this region, and this shows that then it had an importance. And the archaeological evidence from Kumombo upholds very clearly this view. And of course, such a project can never be done alone. And I'm very grateful to the joint mission, also to the specialists of Kumombo and the Eastern Delta who came with us to work with us, to the Ministry of Antiquities, especially the Egyptian part, and the inspectors and all institution mentioned here. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for this fresh presentation of the results of the last season. So thank you to have shared with us all this information. We have questions for Dr. Foster Müller maybe in the chat. Il y a quelqu'un? People are thanking very much for this interesting lecture. I have a question about what you think it is possible to understand how this building, this administrative maybe building, ended. There is a destruction that destroyed it. It is possible to date this destruction, or to I don't know, not maybe understanding better what happened, but yeah, having more information. Do you have more information about that, or
a very good question, Andrea. I'm a very how to start. I think in general, one should not link the structural layers always to historical events. However, it's very in Kumombo. It's very interesting that all over the tell you find these burning layers, and especially the upgoing structures of the first intermediate period are affected. What I did not say is that with the very beginning of the Middle Kingdom, you don't find material, no, that's not correct, but on the tell itself, you don't find traces for this period and not for the second intermediate period. However, you find some evidence, also epigraphic, also from the Middle Kingdom. So what happened after the first intermediate period at the beginning of the Middle Kingdom? But I mean, it's clearly, it could be possible that these layers are just shifted away by later activity. I mean, the Ptolemaic temple is sitting on top of the structures. It could be also that what we know, for example, from Avaris, that the part of the town moved from the early Middle Kingdom or somewhere to the west, east, or wherever. So it would. We could easily clarify this if we could do a thermoluminescence on these structures. Yes, so then, but for the now, we cannot say more. We cannot date the firing. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, yes, thank you, really. And what you, if you evaluate also the dimension of these silos, can we understand maybe a little bit how these silos were useful for a community? Do you have information about that, or because we have comparisons with other silos and storerooms of this kind in other sites to understand?
Yes. I mean, there is a very nice PhD by Martina Badonova who has written about these granaries. So more or less, it seems to be that they're granaries. Just not saying yet because we have not excavated the inner part. They're very close. Parallels for this beehive shape, and I'm grateful to Cornelius von Pilgrim who told me this is from Elephantine, but the best parallels actually are from Edfu. Where, for example, Nadine Möller has also, but this is from the second intermediate period, but yes, these seem to be granaries connected to a storage area, and yeah.
Oh, thank you. So thank you. And the structure is something one floor or two floors, like something we see in the models, or do you think it could be something like that? Or
it has several phases very clearly, but we have not dismantled it yet because it's first of all it's so nice. So it would be nice maybe at some point to make an open air museum out of it. But it has several phases. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
So we have a question. What, if anything, does Kumombo tell us about any change in religious beliefs and practices during the first intermediate period? And the
for this, okay, for this, I can very shortly say we cannot contribute to this in the moment. Yeah. Mm.
And there was another question from Christiana Kohler after. Do you have any carbon 14th dates?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
No. And also we have for the moment we don't have good samples yet. So okay. Not yet. No. But it would be helpful, of course. Yeah. Mm.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And Roman Seguier is asking, do you have any signs of ceramic production on the site, please? Slabs, overfired pottery. I think
no, but what we have, this was the work of the groundwater lowering project, and this is quite exciting. In the area behind the Crocodile Museum, they found the pottery workshop of the 4th dynasty with a potter's wheel, etc. So yes, this is from the 4th dynasty. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other question? Yes, Inji Adam. Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much for this lecture. It's very interesting. But I want to know if you have found any traces for a chapel or cult statues in the houses.
No, we have not. No, but what we have excavated until now is that there would be the silos around. So in the administrative part, you would not expect. We have not found. Yeah. Mm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I can just add another question from myself. I'm very curious about this very interesting site. What it seems very interesting also is to see that the town is maybe getting bigger in the first intermediate period, overlapping somehow. This is overlapping. Do you think it really overlapping the Old Kingdom's cemeterial area?
Well, it's clearly overlapping the Old Kingdom, but if it's bigger, I would be very cautious because this is you cannot say this. It could also be that actually that it's either it could be bigger, it could be smaller, it could be moving. You know, this is such a small area. No, I would not say it's bigger or not bigger. No.
Thank you so much for these answers.
No. But it's clearly on top of it, so it's very nicely. You have the Old Kingdom, which we're now in the more or less by the end of the second dynasty going down, and then you have a very dense settlement stratigraphy, and suddenly there is a change. Then there is the level layer, and then you have the cemetery. But I would not say this is bigger. No.
Perfect. Thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I didn't note the number of the tomb with the body in the flexed position. Is it the tomb with the Nubian pottery?
No. And also the pottery, the Nubian pottery is from a filling, so it's not an in situ thing. It's not connected to no.
So all the material that you found in the tombs is like it's similar, or there are different?
The material we found in the tombs is mainly pottery, and it's all Egyptian pottery.
Okay, thank you.
So there is not flex position, not connected to Nubian, or it's just no.
Cinzia has a question too, and could this have been the area that supplied food for the Aswan area, which had the little agricultural production, considering the huge silos and the extensive floodplain? See Boma's lecture of this morning.
You mean I don't think so. I think this is more a local part. I mean, there are many things one could say about the lecture before. I mean, but for the moment, it's first of all, the silos are not so huge when you compare, for example, when you have a very good example from Mark Lehner's excavation in Giza, where this is this rural area with the settlement, and there the silos are really huge. So these are more provincial, like you have in El Edfo, for example. And I mean, in Elefantina, you have many silos. I don't. Yeah, of course one could not exclude it, but I would be very skeptical about it.
Okay, so Julian Posch, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I was just wondering how many barrels of the first intermediate period you excavated until now, and if there are any barrels of children.
How many did we don't make it up now. It's around altogether, let's say 18 or 18 to 20, and real children not. No.
So Matthew Adams, thanks a lot. There is another question. Do you, Yasser Mahmoud Hussein, do you have any evidence dated to pre or early dynastic period?
What we have is the earliest we have is late second dynasty, when beginning in this period. No, but nothing before. But I mean, what we hope to do is, and as you see here, we have the strict restrictions from Austria, so we were not allowed to continue our season because of COVID. But I mean, we will see what comes where, because we are planning to go deeper within the trend of the Old Kingdom, and until now, not. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dr. Foster-Müller, for this keynote lecture this evening, and see you tomorrow with a session on ceramics and ceramic and pottery sequences. And I say you bye to all the attendees on Zoom, and I will just say to you that we have a little dinner after just here, so if you can stay with us, thank you. So bye, goodbye.
Thank you.